It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show! Hey everybody, it's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey gang.
Les Webster.
Hello.
And Liz Newman.
Hello, everybody.
So how are you guys doing?
Lovely.
Doing great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Les.
Yeah.
Can you tell which one of us was being honest?
The answer is none of us were.
Right, that's the deal. We all lied. I mean, come on.
Some of us hit it better than others. So what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
Well, this week I felt inspired mainly because I needed something to laugh at, and we've mentioned Police Squad a couple of times recently, and so I pulled my disc out. I pulled my disc out. I just realized what I said there. Sorry. And that was bad.
Fellowship After Dark. All right.
Are we going to have to get one of those boop buttons?
That would be fun. It would be fun to just go through and randomly stick those in, even when we're not actually saying bad words, but make people think we're saying more bad
Kimmel?
words.
Oh, Kimmel does that all the time. It's
Yeah,
funny.
Those are funny. I'm not a Kimmel fan, but that's funny. Anyway, I pulled my Police Squad disc out and started watching them, and of course they're freaking genius, so, you know. And the other thing I did was I started reading, because I'm this far behind the times, I started reading an old pre-Disney Star Wars novel, one of the later Timothy Zahn ones.
Okay.
Which is pretty good. It's called Allegiance.
Woohoo!
And I'm liking it. It's set like right after New Hope.
Awesome.
And it's pretty cool.
I have not read that one. Gonna have to. I'm gonna have to check that one out. Who's next?
I don't have a whole lot of reading done this week. I've gotten used to trades, I think, so I've been saving up a lot of stuff to read it all at once. And I got hooked on this, the Walking Dead omnibus, so I'm through the second one, into the third one now, and I'll be able to finally put it down when it's over. So, but that's not a whole lot in my little corner.
Okay.
The Walking Dead omnibus, and you're talking about reading more than one of them, I'd say that's plenty.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
dang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because they haven't put out the fourth one yet, but I think it's kind of neat, though, because, of course, if you're Walking Dead fans, it's about to start back up, and it's kind of neat to see the difference. Sometimes I forget that it was different in the comics because it happened so long ago. So sometimes I just like to refresh so I don't get lost in what the canon is.
You make it sound like you're not like caught up with the books.
Well, I am, and I pull the current one all the time.
Okay.
But I'm caught up with the current books, but I like refreshing because I don't think the TV series will ever get where the comics are right now. So, looking at some of the older things, how it's varying from the TV show.
Right.
Yeah. And, before they start the season, you always watch the last season. So, sometimes it's just good to remember that's not the way it was.
It's a different interpretation.
Right. And the one they're taking now, it's kind of weird. I don't know if I like it.
You gotta view the whole thing before you can determine whether you like it or not.
Right. Yep. Like I said, I won't spoil the last episode, but I don't know where they could possibly do any good from where they're going with that, you know? So I think their viewership will take a hit on it for sure.
It might.
Yep. Well, Glenn did. I don't know if it was losing those characters or how violent everybody said it was, you know?
Okay. Sorry.
So.
Talk about... You mentioned ratings take a hit, and you said Glenn did. It was like ouch.
True. No pun intended.
Wow.
Yeah. That was like for weeks after that, my husband was like, wow, I bet he didn't see that one coming, did he? I was like, wow. Did you really have to go there?
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I took care of that splitting headache.
Right? I think Pie Pie was thrown around a few times. You know?
So how about you, Les?
This weekend, let's see. I did some grading on comics, and Sunday I attended the Big Spider. Christopher Mihm was in town, showing one of his early films, and it was still a riot. It was still fun to sit and watch this and know that it is so deep, tongue-in-cheek, that it's really scary. If I recall, the Spider won a Forrest J. Ackerman Award for Best Spider in Film at the time that it was released.
Nice.
And I don't think there were all that many Spider films at that time.
I was about to ask that, but I was afraid to.
That year was light on spiders.
Yeah, that or it may have been a year that Spider-Man came out, so he could overcome that spider easy. But it was fun. It was a good watch, and he kept the crowd entertained prior to and after the film.
Cool.
Sweet.
Alrighty. Few things for me. I had told Les about this earlier. I had caught a film from '71 called Catlow. It's based off a Louis L'Amour novel. It starred Yul Brynner, Richard Crenna, and Leonard Nimoy. And it was kind of interesting because I told Les that the thing that was kind of different about this one is it was a rather animated Yul Brynner. Those who are familiar with him, he was the robot from Westworld, the cowboy robot. Of course, the head guy from the original Magnificent Seven. He's done a lot of westerns and then kind of noirs, and he was the king in King and I. But he's usually kind of this stoic and all this, and in this film, him and Crenna were buddies, and they were kind of throwing these kind of funny lines at each other, and he's laughing and smiling, and I'm like, okay, this is a little difficult to get used to. And Nimoy was playing a bounty hunter, and doing some research on the film. He was talking about he had a lot of fun doing this because it wasn't Spock. So, but it was a different film, but it was kind of funny. It was pretty good. I'd probably check it out here again down the road.
Is this a Western?
Yes, it was a Western.
Okay. Well, you said bounty hunter. I wasn't. That could go either way. That could go noir. That could go Western.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well,
I mean, I know Louis L'Amour, but Louis L'Amour also wrote other stuff sometimes. Not often.
Yeah, but what is he known?
Well, yeah, I get. Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. Right. So, yes, this was a Western. I did pick up, those of y'all who've been listening to the podcast, y'all know my kind of sudden passion for the Marvel Epic collections that I've been, it's just something I've kind of gotten into recently, and I had picked up the Black Panther version. There's only one so far. It's called Panther's Rage, and it collects 2 stories from Fantastic Four, but the rest of it's from Jungle Action, which was a book from it may have been around from the 60s, but these particular tales were from the early to mid 70s, written by Don McGregor and some really impressive artists in here. So I've read a couple of those stories so far. I haven't made it too deep into the book, but I've been digging this. And what came down today, and of course behind the scenes, y'all probably know this from listening to our previous podcast that we recorded on Tuesday for a release on the following Sunday. But one of the video games that I watch on Twitch, I've talked about this several times before, Dead by Daylight, it got a new DLC today. They've added content from the Saw franchise, and it's been rather interesting. The killer is it's actually Amanda Young. And a spoiler for those who've not seen more than the first movie. Amanda Young was in the first film. She was played by Shawnee Smith, who is a victim, and later becomes an apprentice for Jigsaw. So she's running around in the pig mask and cloak and all that, and she's going around going after survivors. And with her, she's got the whole blade on her wrist that pops out for her to attack. But the other thing she's got is the reverse bear trap, which was what she had in the first film that she had escaped from. This is an interesting dynamic they've added, and it's going to be interesting to see. So far, the response has been rather positive. But what happens is, if she downs you, she puts the trap on you. So she's carrying 4 of these. One supposedly for each one, or if you get out of it, she'll put another one on you. And the thing is located on the map, there's at least 4 boxes, and there could be more depending on whatever special abilities the killer has as it gets higher level. And what happens is, if you have the bear trap on, you have to go up to the box and put your hands in there, and you're trying to search for a key. Now, you'll get the key, but it may not be the key that actually works for your bear trap. And you have 20 seconds to do this, which is fine unless someone powers up a generator. If a generator powers up, then all of a sudden the clock on the back of the bear trap starts, and you have 2 minutes and 30 seconds to get that bear trap off of you. Otherwise, it goes off. So, as someone was describing it last night, it's a diversion. I mean, yes, it's another way to kill one of the survivors, but it's a diversion because you're spending all that time trying to get that off instead of trying to power up the generators to escape.
Huh.
It's an interesting dynamic because all of a sudden you've got, it's not just necessarily the killer that's causing your death. It could be somebody else. Now, it's not happened a lot. I have watched at least 30 or so campaigns in this environment, and I've seen maybe 3 or 4 die from the head mask.
Yeah.
So, well, one of them I didn't see. It just happened. There's a lot of times where it just doesn't happen. You just don't see it, but you know what happened. And here's the other thing: you cannot escape with the trap on. If you try to go out the door, it goes off. It speeds up, and then it will go off. So you got to get it off before you leave. So yes, and I know Les is going okay, because he's never really been in favor of this game. He thinks it doesn't sound like it's a fair game, but you can get out. It's just an interesting new dynamic. And like I said, I've seen people get out of it and survive and all that. So, but I think this is gonna pump in a little bit more excitement for the game. Now, there's been complaints because this is the third licensed killer in a row after Freddy and then Leatherface. So, a lot of the players were hoping it was going to be a original killer, but not so much this time. And it's unusual that it came down on a Tuesday, because usually their updates and all that are on a Thursday, and then I found out prior to us getting ready to record that the new movie just came out on DVD and Blu-ray today as well. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So
it does.
So. Neat.
Yeah,
it's pretty neat.
It's kind of interesting, and I didn't even tell you who the survivor is. The survivor is Detective Tapp, the Danny Glover character from the first film. So now it doesn't look like Danny Glover at all, and I know they did. They couldn't do that, but it was kind of cool that they did that. So.
Yep, nice little throwback.
Yep. It is. Alrighty, before we get into this week's topic, I want to take a couple moments to thank our sponsors for their support. You fine folks at Things Under the World have been sponsoring us for pretty much ever since we started. Not too long after we started up and going, and we appreciate it. Right now, they are running their 30% off 2017 items. It changes different week to week. This week will be actually toys, action figures, and collectibles. And that's in addition to their evergreen deals of 50% off Nicodent Comics, 30% off pre-order manga titles, and then 40% off comics, statues, toys, and merchandise from other years or maybe even current. So you want to check out some of these deals, best thing you can do is to go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, click on our sponsors tab, and you'll see more information about the current deals that are running. And check back often, because there's always a new deal going on, and we'll have all that information there as well as links. So you can just click on there, and that'll take you to Things from Another World, and that lets them know that we sent you their way. And go have fun. All right. For this week, something that was kind of brought to my attention a while back, and this is really the first chance we've had to discuss it. We are now 3 issues into the new, I guess you want to call it an event book, from DC Comics, Doomsday Clock, which is introducing, or which is bringing the Watchmen characters into the DC world proper, or the DC universe proper. It's obviously done real well. The first 2 issues have already gone to second printing, and more than likely the 3rd issue will as well. It'll be interesting to see how that continues, because they just recently announced that the title is going to be going bi-monthly here in another couple of months. And it'll be bi-monthly. But there was an editorial that came out, and this was posted on Comics Bulletin, and we'll have a link in the show notes. And it was a 4-part editorial. I think it's an editorial, and it's called "The Case Against Doomsday Clock." And this was written by Chase Magnet. And in this column, he basically talks about DC's handling of the Watchmen proper and the relationship between them and Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. So I thought that was something that when I read it, I had some opinions. I think there were some things that were not brought up that should have been brought up, and I threw it out to the guys for them to check out, and we kind of decided, well, let's just have a little discussion about this. So with that little introduction, I'm going to open up the floor, and whoever would like to go first, go right ahead.
Okay, let me start. I was really upset reading this. I've heard of the transgressions that DC committed on this. I read this article, and he rehashed, I would say, 85% of what I already knew. Well, let's go back. Let's start back at the backstory of DC and the history of the Watchmen. The Watchmen was originally to be based on characters from a group of comics, and that was what, the Mighty Crusaders?
It was the Charlton characters, which right. DC had at that point had recently acquired.
Yes, and Alan Moore was wanting to write a story of a murder within this group, and it was to be decided, mysteriously over several issues as to who the murderer was. DC, like you said, obtained the company that Moore was going to pilfer, and presented a synopsis of what was going to happen. The characters that he was going to use were based on the characters from MLJ Comics. There was no sugarcoating. There was no false front as to who this was going to be. DC, upon receiving the script, started asking for changes immediately. And this was because they did not want to traipse these characters out there at that moment. I believe they were looking for a venue in which they could have a story like Who Killed the Peacemaker within their own little universe, yet reestablish a separate universe, which DC is known to do. They being Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons, knew they didn't want to create something for a work-for-hire contract. They wanted to do their story, they expected somebody to pick it up. Some publisher would be happy to have this, was their thought. DC stepped up and said, okay, we want you to do this story, but we want we want to change the characters. Hence, you had people that were either transformed Mighty Crusaders or transformed DC creations. And that way they could, this would appeal to more people. And yes, you look at the various characters and you could look at a person and say, oh, that's such and such. That's Batman. That's Superman. That's Captain Atom. And just right through the whole list. Not that that was a distraction for the Watchmen. When the deal was struck, the contract stated that Moore and Gibbons would receive the characters, the rights to the characters, back from DC if after 1 year there was no printing of the Watchmen. Well, DC decided that they would do a collection, which, would you not expect that?
Right.
So by doing that and continuing with either new stories of Watchmen characters or of reprinting the Watchmen, they were in the right to hold on to the characters. The problems arise when Watchmen comes out and it was a huge success. This was a comic book that could not be kept on the shelves when it first came out. I remember scrambling a couple of times to get a couple of issues to make sure I had the collection. The book, the collected book, the trade of this was a huge success. It made the New York Times as a huge seller. But with this came the merchandising, the ideas of promotion, which upset Moore. In this review of Watchmen and everything that went on, you hear very little about Dave Gibbons and what his thought was. You hear about how Alan Moore was upset. And Moore had kind of blown up about this. And he said, I'll never work for DC again. Much to his chagrin, when he signed his books, ABC Books, founded ABC, America's Best Comics. And when he had them, they were an imprint of Jim Lee's Wildstorm in the late 90s. The Wildstorm titles had some big names in it, with Tom Strong, Promethea, Top 10, and Tomorrow Stories. And those are just the ones that Moore was involved with. He also made League of Extraordinary Gentlemen with Kevin O'Neill there. So unfortunately, with that contract, Moore was back under the thumb of DC, which he really did not wish to be. But he shouldered on. He said, we'll do this, we'll get this done. But what really did him in is the issue Tomorrow Stories number 8, which was a fantastic book. It was, if I recall, it was an anthology, and it gave you such insight as to where a writer and or artist could go. And boy, they did a lot of different stuff. But in this particular issue, Tomorrow Stories number 8, Moore was trying to deal with L. Ron Hubbard, he of the Scientology fame. And in his article, Chase Magnet, who wrote this article, even in this, he noted that Hubbard, in parentheses, talking about Scientology, it states, a notably litigious cult. Well, DC wanted them to change stuff, which wasn't making Moore happy. But this is a group that will attack you just by, if you make a joke that says about Scientology, they will go after you. DC did not want to face that. So changes were made, but the problem was one of the editors decided to pull the issue. This didn't sit well at all with Moore, and as a result, he pulled away from ABC. He took his toys and went to another sandbox, which never saw print, but Wildstorm continued forward. And they also had the backing of DC Comics. That's how they could stay afloat. Currently, Wildstorm, I think, has 3 titles. One of them is Wildstorm, and I think there are a couple of others. But DC, according to Magnet, thumbed their nose at Moore and Gibbons by doing the Before Watchmen series, which was a prequel to Watchmen. And they ended up doing 9 titles that concerned the various characters. And most of them were, I want to say, 4-issue, maybe 3-issue series. And a lot of them were 2 characters per issue. So it kind of, instead of 3 full issues of a character, you got 1.5 of 2 characters. This didn't sit well with Moore either. He, according to this article, it is really slanted in Moore's favor. Moore is, according to Magnet, is the victim through the whole thing. But I am not of that opinion. I think there are things other than just what he is stating as he believes to be fact. This, you have to remember when you read this page or this article, it is an opinion. Do not take it for fact. Look at what is read or written and decide on your own if it is fact. I personally find problems with his article. So, well, let me step back. Somebody else go ahead and take the reign.
I thought you were doing pretty good there, Les.
I need to take a drink. Thanks.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess with me and when I'm reading a comic and stuff, I don't really get into a lot of the author, but Alan Moore's always been one of those that, I've read a lot of his work, yes, but he seems to be in the spotlight more. And I think he puts himself there. So there's definitely more to the story. I think a lot of times people look at big corporations like DC and Disney, and they have to play by a whole different set of rules than what the normal person does. In the case with the Scientology, you can't spit on somebody's religion and not expect there to be some backlash. As a big corporation, they're going to be the ones to get that backlash, not more. They're going to take the grunt of it. So I can definitely side with that and understand why they did that. But for Alan Moore as an artist, nobody likes to be censored. It's not the way he visioned it, and So I think on some things, yes, DC did have to step in and say, whoa, Although it is kind of funny that, like Les was saying, he took his toys and went to another sandbox, and then DC bought that sandbox. Kind of forced you to play with them at that point,
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Right? Kind of like DC said, now what? What else are you going to do? But I know with Moore, his work is darker. But
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say one thing. One of the things that I thought that popped in my head when I was reading this, and I was glad someone else mentioned this in the comment section, is the whole thing with the deal. Is that, as Les said, that when the book went out of print, that the rights of the characters would have gone back to Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. Be mindful that this was in the early 80s. This was the very beginning of the trade paperbacks. Now, a deal like this would be made today because there's that because that condition probably would not be agreed upon.
Right, or it would be incorporated into the deal as a separate kind of section.
Right.
There would be, okay, this is what's the floppies and then what the trades.
Yeah, because the the individual books did well, and then when they collected it for the first time and put it out there, it took off. It really took off. I mean, Watchmen, Dark Knight Returns, Camelot 3000, Ronin. These were the early days of the collections that were actually being sold in bookstores, which was they had stuff collected before, but it was not presented in the way that we're aware of them now. This was the early days of that stuff. So it really took off. So it had a new avenue of readers. And of course, it was so widely praised that people would go, okay, I need to find out what this is about. And it's continually in print. There's always new printings. Now, I'm sure there's some tinfoils out there that say, well, they're trying to keep doing new printings so they can avoid this condition of the deal. I seriously doubt that.
That seems hard to believe.
Yeah. But hey, you never know. I mean, like this whole thing is so totally that DC is just really screwed over them, over Moore and Gibbons. And yes, there are some bad bloods. There are some things that they did that they shouldn't have done. But from what I understand, they still get royalties for the Watchmen merchandise and books and stuff. If I'm wrong, please let me know. But I believe Gibbons still gets a check. I don't know if Moore actually accepts his anymore or not. But I do believe they do still get a little bit off of it. And
Like a royalty.
Yeah, royalties, and yeah, of course, royalties and all that. And then the whole thing with the Alan Moore and ABC. Yeah, if I remember, I think Les covered it was the fact that Moore was promised that there would be no editorial interference, and then that happened, and then I think that was the final. That was obviously the final straw.
Right. But couldn't you see a more bigger company like DC who had more of a name and a base behind them than a smaller company who didn't really have that? They seem to be a little bit more liberal than what these big corps can be. Not saying that they're a big corp, but they are one of the top two. I kind of see DC's actions. Sometimes you have to make the hard choice, and when it's going to offend a lot of people, it seems that the bigger companies pull the trigger a lot quicker to get it off the shelf, to hush it up, than the smaller companies do.
If they really wanted to milk the Watchmen proper, because this has been around 30-something years,
right?
Why did it take so long for there to be any kind of a follow-up to the original story? I mean, a lot of movement's been within the last few years.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you had the movie a while back, and yes, there was some merchandising of that, but that was pretty much it. There would be maybe something here, maybe something there, but not. They weren't being milked like like they do their own properties.
Yeah.
There was. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, and you mentioned the movie, which I think brings up a point here. Why did it take 20 years to get the movie made?
Yeah.
I legitimately don't know the answer to this, but I'm going to bet that's whatever that was, whatever legal wranglings or whatever was going on there, or funding issues or whatever it was, is also part of what held up a good chunk of any development that would be on the comic side for the Watchmen universe, because I mean, clearly there was something weird going on.
Yeah.
Because it, like I said, I think it was 2000, was it 6 or 7? That the movie finally came out from a mid-'80s comic book. It's 20 years. If it was that popular, and it was, why would you not have a movie out by 1990?
Yeah.
Admittedly, the tech was better in 2006 or whenever, and so it looked better than it would have in 1990, but still, there was tech. I mean, there was CGI, there was the stuff you needed. But there's something going
you're
on
also
there.
hitting in on that time period now that comic book movies are the biggest thing in the theaters. Before, you had Superman and you had a Batman, but other than that, Hollywood didn't really mess with comic books,
Yeah, right. And Watchmen would have been right about the time that was starting.
Right.
And
that's what I was about
the
to
other
say.
thing that I thought was interesting dealing with the movie was that it really wasn't that big a hit.
Yeah.
I mean, it made its money back based on the actual budget of the movie. Who knows how much the 20 years of whatever cost them before that.
Yeah.
So more than likely, it really didn't make money. And the movie was pretty well panned. Most fans were not happy with the movie. I mean, as I recall. So, I mean, which makes it weird that was kind of when there was the push towards creating new material for that universe. And and at that point, Alan Moore was so far out of the picture, it wasn't even funny anymore. But
Yeah.
I think the main reason it did not get made earlier is that it changed hands. The ownership of the film changed hands several times.
Mm.
I believe that Terry Gilliam was tied to it at one time.
I was thinking that,
And as a result, they couldn't decide exactly where they were going, because when you change leaders, that person's got a different view of what's going to be on the screen. So, to me, that's where that stall came from. I think
But that's not 20 years worth of stalling. I mean, admittedly, if Gilliam's attached for a year, it's going to take 5 years for anybody else to figure out what the hell's going on, because Terry Gilliam's just got that kind of mind. But 20 years? I don't know.
but I'm looking at multiples, and usually a multiple will give you 5 years to try to make it. And I think Dan Aykroyd was another that was tied to it as owner of the script. And when you go through these different shifts, you're going to get 11 different scripts.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, now according to Wikipedia, which you can take for what it's worth, because that's not always accurate, it was in development purgatory from October 1987 to 2005. So almost 20 years, just in quoting what they call development hell. And yes, at one time it was going to be directed by Gilliam and produced by Joel Silver. But the film came out in 2009. That's
9, okay. That was close.
but it's still the early days of the superhero tide that we're still riding right now.
Yeah, I think it beat Iron Man out. I think it came out before Iron Man, if I remember correctly. I think. I should have looked that up, but
That's all right.
It was only by a few months, if it was, but yeah, I don't know. Ultimately, I think the problem here was that Moore and Gibbons signed a bad deal with DC.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I need to blame DC for that up front. I think they have taken some serious liberties along the way in the way they've treated it. But I think at the time, I mean, this is well before our right now wonderful golden age of creator-owned comics. So there really weren't a whole lot of options available. And to be honest, at the time, DC was going to give them their best bet to get a wide audience. So there were things they were going to have to sacrifice a little bit. And so, yeah, they signed a bad deal. Why it was a bad deal is very much up for debate. But, I mean, nobody knew when they signed the deal, when either side signed the deal, how huge the book was going to be. And so that was just, I mean, the idea that to sign the rights away basically until it goes out of print is, I mean, the smart thing to do there would have been or X number of years, whichever comes first.
Right.
But nobody thought for a minute that it was still going to be in print 20 years later. So that just didn't happen.
Yeah, I was about to say based off of what has happened in the past.
Right, that just didn't happen.
It didn't.
I mean, it was the biggest book in 40 years.
Well, even now it's a staple in every comic book store. You can walk in and there's a Watchmen book there, Oh,
I'm willing to bet you could find it taught at most universities at this point as literature. Yep. It should be if it's not.
I definitely agree with you there. That's something for whether it be a comic book class or a film class, to sit down and dissect both is the way to go.
It would be interesting to dissect it in a film class for sure.
Yeah.
Just to see kind of where the movie went wrong. But anyway.
Or with the contract that was signed, maybe a business class too. You know, the art of negotiation.
There's maybe you may have a point, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are the limited stuff out there for that.
Yeah.
I bet there's got to be, like, the comic book legal defense fund has to do something for creators on basically on contract law and all of that. You'd think that would be something, especially given this case, that would have to be something that would come up somewhere along the line. There'd have to be some sort of educational materials for comic book creators,
Right.
just to understand contracts. But yeah. I mean, I think there's blame on both sides is my deal. And I mean, sure,
Yeah.
I'm a well-known fence sitter on a lot of things, but I think initially it was errors on both sides, and I honestly do, Les, think of me what you will, I think DC has abused it quite a bit over the years. I think they have pushed the limits well beyond where they need to be on some of the stuff they've done with it. I mean, ultimately, where we go back to the original question, which I don't even know if it got asked this way, was how good an idea is Doomsday Clock in general. I think it's a bad idea. I'll admit I'm not reading it. That's not necessarily because I think it's a horrible idea. I don't know really anything about the story. I'm not judging the story in this case. I think from basically any other perspective other than the story itself, I think the time has passed for milking this property. I find it hard to believe they're making a ton of money on this at this point. I think the time for that is past. I think the movie probably killed it, or at least didn't do it any major favors. And so I don't think there's much. I'm not sure there's much left in this property. So I think they're probably gonna figure that out the hard way. I mean, sure, it's selling now, but what are they going to consider a success? Where's the bar? And is it going to be beyond anything they could possibly do anyway? Who knows? But I don't know. It seems like a money grab at this point, and it seems like an unwise money grab, really, to me, because, like I said, the property's fading. I mean, yes, the original book is still as popular and as good as ever, but there really hasn't been anything else that's been added to the property that was really needed.
Right.
So I don't know. I wouldn't have done it if I was them, but I'm not them. They're not me.
I see the purpose of the book, though, is to bring the Watchmen characters into the DC universe, their main superhero universe, and be able to use them.
Why?
Yeah, I was about to say, but the question is, should they? I'm trying to be on the fence here because, you know.
Well,
yeah,
I'm liking it.
I'm liking it, but you know, I do kind of question why. You know, why to do this other than to, as Mike said, just continue to utilize them.
I believe it's something that yes, DC wants. They've got a stable of characters. They want to do something with them. They are joining two groups together and are able to expand on that. If they bring the Watchmen in, and if you look at the original story, you don't have all that many Watchmen that you can bring in. But you can even do a title for Watchmen, which is a possibility of sales. Yeah, it's a money grab, but it's something that will be accepted by the public.
Yeah.
For a while.
Well, you say, yeah, they've got characters there that they could use, but I go back just a few years ago when the new 52 started, and here's all the Wildstorm characters. They were trying to bring them into DC proper, and they disappeared pretty quick.
And nobody cared.
Yeah.
Well, if it's not going to sell, they won't print it.
And even before then, they were trying to bring in the Milestone characters, and then they disappeared. And now we're getting Milestone on their own, and Wildstorm's on their own. But so, some people would say, yeah, it might be kind of cool to see Rorschach and Dr. Manhattan run around with Batman and Superman, but there are so many other characters that fans are waiting for them to come back that don't have the kind of baggage that these do. Like I said, I'm trying to play devil's advocate here, but
Right.
I mean, I'm not losing sleep that they're coming back, but yeah, it's if this had not happened, I would not have. I wouldn't shed a tear that if they had killed all this and it never happened either. So, I'm kind of ambivalent about the whole thing.
If I may say this.
Okay, all right.
In this opinion, there was one section that really got my dander up. That was his rebuttals part 3 of his article. To me, there is no rebuttal in this. He looks at, and this is Magnet speaking, he looks at statements made by people. And to me, if it's going to be a rebuttal, it should be rebutted both directions. His first rebuttal concerns DC Comics has done nothing illegal. Then he goes off on a tirade about DC Comics. Why not also say, but DC Comics did this for this title, for the Watchmen, did this for more, did this for Gibbons, did this for Moore and Gibbons, and give statistics or statements at least that tell you that it's half and half as far as problems. You folks already stated that.
Right.
Both sides are wrong at how they approached it. Okay, then both sides are guilty. This rebuttal section irritates the crap out of me because it is extremely one-sided. And I can't take that.
Les, dude. There's one thing you have to keep in mind, though, and that is the title of Magnet's article. The case against Doomsday Clock. He states right up front that he is writing this from a point of view, and it is a point of view that is on basically siding with Alan Moore. So I mean, it's hard to get real hunky about how he's taking a side because he says he's taking a side.
But the case is against Doomsday Clock. He doesn't discuss Doomsday Clock.
No, but his point is that Doomsday Clock shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because of the history, which he admits to coming at from a definite anti-DC side. And I'm not, I mean, I don't know if there were any articles written like this in the other direction. There may have been. I didn't see them. would have been interesting to see. But I think the deal is that a lot of the popular opinion is pro-Moore on this and anti-DC. My deal is I think that there, like I said, I think there's wrong on both sides. I think there are errors and mistakes and even some hostile action on both sides. So I don't think there is a side that should be taken one way or the other. I think it's just a bad situation, and DC continuing to put out books is not making it better. And it's never going to get better. But DC trying to milk it is not helping.
This has kind of put me in a weird spot because I keep feel like I'm defending corporations because I'm usually anti-corp, but DC's out there to make money. They're going to do what makes money. It has drove me crazy what they've done with Harlequin because they're on that cash cow and they've totally changed my girl. But they're going to do what makes money. The average comic book reader doesn't know a lot of the backstory. We've got a lot of younger readers who probably only know Alan Moore by The Killing Joke, you know. They don't know the history. So I think right now when we're seeing that it's selling and stuff is because people aren't really, I know I'm going to sound horrible saying this, I'm not reading the series because of the history. I'm reading it because I enjoy good stories. I like the artwork in it. The story so far, I thought it was going to be real political, but it's kind of not, you know. But that's why I'm reading it. If I don't know, I guess it boils down to what's going to make them money. If it's not going to sell, they won't do it. They'll back off. They'll find someone else. But most fans now are saying, we want something different. We want something, but don't change the character. Just give us the character. Give us a good story. And I think that's what they're trying to do here. They're not trying to change the character. They're just trying to give us a good story. They're not going to make, you know, Batman a girl or, you know, anything like that. They're just going to give us a good story.
Yeah, see, and I think I've said this before, but what the general public wants is they want a brand new story with the same old characters doing the same old things.
Yep.
Which is an inherent contradiction.
Well, they want something different, but they don't want it different.
Right. They want it different, but they want it to be so close to the crap we've already seen that it's practically indistinguishable. And
right.
You know, that there's its own brand of crazy. But
right.
Yeah.
Well, and too, when you've hit a brick wall, you sit down and you regroup and you're like, okay, what's been successful for us in the past? You know, what did we do that they liked? And I'm sure Watchmen came up numerous times, but, you know, I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to put my head in the sand kind of thing, but if it's a good story, I'm going to read it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fair. I mean, because that's ultimately that's what we're in this for. Is it's a form of entertainment, and if it entertains us, we're going to consume it. That's the way it is.
Well, and I think the whole deal with Alan Moore is kind of like the TMZ of comics. You know, some people like the soap opera, they like the drama. They to me, I'm more of, okay, but did he get my story out to me in time? Does the cover cover all the pages? You know? So, but I wouldn't say I'm a naive reader because it boils down to I read what I like. It could be written by Alan Moore or it could be written by Mark Miller. You know, you never know what story is going to grab you.
Or Jeff Johns, for that matter.
Right. But what I do know of Alan Moore's never been good, what I've heard. So, yeah. I don't know why.
He's a controversial character, that's for sure.
Right. And from what I understand, he's a very dramatic person. I'm leaving after I write one more book, so those kind of
Yeah.
people drive me crazy.
Yep.
But 2, I do think artists should be paid what they're worth. He did create a good storyline. That success didn't come from DC. They just printed the book for him. I think it boils down to, like you said, they did a bad contract. I don't think they realized how big it was going to take off or how much money was going to be brought in, and Alan Moore got the wrong side of that stick. So they were both wrong by trying to do the right thing at the time. Because DC could have given in, but they apparently didn't.
Okay. Very interesting discussion. Any final thoughts before we take a quick break?
No.
No, not really.
Although, like I said before, I am reading the story. It did kind of upset me who they declared the smartest man on our Earth was, but that's neither here or there.
I was just going to say I want to thank you guys for reining me in.
Did we?
Oh, yes.
It wasn't on purpose.
It was necessary.
Nah.
It's all good. Alrighty. With that, we are going to take a break and come back with our weekly picks. And we're back. It's time for our weekly picks. And leading off this week is Les.
Coming to you from Aftershock Comics is Dark Arc number 5. If you're following this one, I'm mesmerized by it. Hopefully you are too. So if you're following this one, this is going to take an even bigger turn. The vampires in this are attacking man and monster. So you're getting that third side, and the question is, are the monsters going to fight with the humans? Are the humans destined to be the fodder for the others? This is from Colin Bunn and Juan Doe. So get out there, find the previous issues, and head on up the road here, because this is good stuff.
Yep. It's a pretty dang good read.
Yep, I agree.
Yep.
Alrighty, Liz.
Alright, my first pick is going to be from DC, called Motherlands. Well, actually, I think it's Vertigo. This is going to be where technology has gone crazy and it's breeded a new kind of criminal. And a mom and daughter team actually is going to hunt them down. So, should be kind of crazy. Girl and her mother relationship kind of thing.
Yeah, this one sounds pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that was one of my picks also. It was really intriguing.
Yep. Because it sounds like her mom's like her only hope of finding this really bad person, or criminal. I don't think they're people. I think they look more like monsters and stuff. So, sci-fi adventure, yay. And the superhero in the story may actually turn out to be the mom. Go moms.
Careful there.
Oh, Mom.
Right. We moms can do it.
Sure.
Alrighty, Mikey.
Okie dokie. My first pick is a Boom book. I'm going with Lazaretto number 5. This is the final issue of the series. And if you have not been paying attention to this, it is a catastrophe in a test tube sort of book. I'm not sure that's even a real thing. But essentially the deal is there's this horrible disease, and this college dorm is in lockdown because of it, and it's under quarantine, and the whole thing is basically the drama that's going on inside. So then we're getting there's basically two characters left that have kind of become friends out of this, and we're gonna get to see if they can survive until morning.
Woohoo!
Cool.
Dun-dun-dun-dun.
Has it been a long time between issues on this?
No, this one's been pretty consistent.
Okay.
You just the wait has just felt that long. That's
Yeah, it's a good book, and so you're like,
Yeah.
oh man, when is the next one coming out? Oh, it's only been 2 weeks. I gotta wait a couple more weeks. Yeah.
That's right.
It's just that good, you know.
Yep. Agreed.
Gonna have to wait with Mom.
Alrighty, I am next, and for my first pick, I'm going with Red Giant Entertainment. It's a new series called AMP, and it is about a project that's going to give mobility to people who have physical challenges. And it's by allowing them to transfer their minds into android bodies. But all of a sudden, someone's wanting to take this project and use it for other purposes. Of course. That's the way it always goes, doesn't it? Yeah. It kind of sounds interesting. It's written by Brian Augustin, and I'm trying to remember the last thing he's written. I think it's been a while, but he's one of those that I like his stuff too. So this has promise. It kind of sounds interesting, so I'll definitely give it a check.
Yep, that
Cool.
sounds kind of cool.
And it does.
Yes.
So, alrighty, Les.
For my second, it's a DC comic, Silencer #1. Writer is Dan Abnett, with illustrators like Sandra Hope, and Johnny Romita Jr., I believe, does the interiors. The character Silencer is one of the deadliest assassins in the DC universe, but you haven't heard of her. This is a comic out of the new heroes that DC is coming out with. I believe last week was Damage.
Yep.
So this is another new one. I'm intrigued by how they write it up, especially with the fact that one of her bosses is Talia al Ghul. So I'm in on this.
Cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I have high hopes for this new Age of Heroes. I'm definitely waiting for the Terrifics and the new challengers, but the Silencer looks good, and Damage is done real well, and we've got Sideways coming up here real soon. That's going to be another interesting one. So, alrighty, Liz.
Cool. My second pick is another one from DC, and it's JLA Doom Patrol Special #1. It's going to be a line-wide adventure. It's DC Young Animals colliding with the DC Universe. The first issue is about Milkman. He was the final son of Krypton, and he was sent to live with some dairy farmers. So you can see where all this is going. Company is stealing stories, and they're changing them and repackaging them, kind of like Superman's story there. And Doom Patrol's got to figure it all out and get everybody's story straight. So should be cool. It comes from one of my favorites, Jared Way. So I think this one's going to be an extra thick issue since it's the first one. And there's going to be, I think it's a one-shot.
Yes, there's a series of one-shots called This is called the Milk Wars. Yeah.
The Milk
Wars.
Wars.
Yeah. Yeah, this one's going to be... Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
This one should be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, Milkman, they're talking about psychic cows, so this is why I love Jared Way.
It could happen.
Yeah, it could. It really could.
Mm,
Yep, this book sounds like the cream of the crop to me.
Right?
pretty much. Alrighty. Mikey, you're up again.
I'm up again, and
Mm-hmm.
this one, for my second pick, I've got a trade from IDW. This is the trade for Saucer State. I've talked about this one once before, I think, but this is a fun little story. It is the sequel to Saucer Country, which was Hugo Award nominated back in its time, and it is the story of a lady who has now become president of the United States. And during the I don't think I'm spoiling too much when I say during the process of this story, it becomes very obvious that her alien abduction was most likely a real thing that happened, as opposed to something in her head that was kind of her big fear, I think, before. And so there's some very interesting, strange stuff going on, but mostly this story is kind of about the politics of it all instead, which is cool. And it's a story that works really well, and I really enjoyed it. So check it out.
Cool.
Very cool.
That's
Alrighty. I'm up again, and for my second pick, I'm with DC Comics again. And this is a collection of Black Lightning tales. This is Black Lightning, Volume 2. This is material that has never been reprinted. It includes Brave and Bold number 163, DC Comics presents number 16, Detective Comics 490 and 491, and then 494 and 495. Justice League of America 173 and 174, and World's Finest issues 265 through 269, and then 271. I want to check this out because some of this stuff I know I have not had before. It's such a great lineup. You got Denny O'Neil, Gary Conway, Martin Pascal, J.M. DeMatteis, Paul Kuppenberg, doing writing, and names like Dick Dillon, George Tuska, Rich Buckler, Marshall Rogers, Pat Broderick, Vince Coletta, Joe Stanton, Dick Giordano. I mean, I'm just keep on going with the lineup of awesome names. And of course, this is coming out just in time with the new series, which has been doing real well from what I've heard. I've not had a chance to watch the show, but heard good things.
Cool.
yeah. Word is it's positive.
That is quite a murderer's row of creators too. Holy cow.
Yeah. And for honorable mention, I have the pleasure of announcing what our honorable mention is for this week, and it's from Marvel Comics. This is Werewolf by Night Complete Collection Volume 2, which I think I've made comments about that before. How can it be complete if it's more than one volume? But it's neither here nor there. This collects Werewolf by Night issues 16 through 30, Giant Size Creatures number 1, Giant Size Werewolf number 2 through 4, and material from Monsters Unleashed, the 1973 series, issues 6 and 7. And talk about Murderer's Row of creators. Same thing here. Mike Friedrich, Doug Minch, Tony Isabella, who created Black Lightning. It all comes around. And Gary Conway again, with art by Mike Plug, Don Perlin, and Pat Broderick again, just to name a few. This Werewolf by Night was a really cool series, and I really wish that it would be brought back. And who knows, it may be. The only really supernatural book they've got right now is the Spirits of Vengeance, which was only a miniseries, but you never know. They may do so well, they may try it again. But definitely a cool little collection there.
Not even really a little collection.
No, it's not.
It's a great collection.
Yeah, that's quite a few books there. Yeah, exactly. Alrighty, any special mentions or shout-outs or announcements this week?
Not me.
No.
Nothing here.
Alrighty, I'll go ahead and do our regular shout-out, Stan. Obviously, first we want to thank Manny the Martyr for the awesome music for our podcast. You should definitely check out what they throw down. We'll have a link in the show notes. They have 2 EPs out right now. You can also go to our website with www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. Click on our podcast tab, and you can see the logo. That'll take you to their site, and just have some fun with that. Thank you guys very much. Second of all, I want to thank the fine folks that make up Podern Family on Twitter. Thank you guys for retweeting our links to our podcast and spreading the word of the fellowship. Guys, take the time, go to Twitter, don't necessarily have an account, and do a search. Just hashtag Podern Family, one whole word, and check out some of these great shows that are being put out. You will not be disappointed. Thank you guys for your support. It's greatly appreciated. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for downloading and listening to today's podcast. We obviously appreciate your support in the past. We value your feedback. If you have a comment, question, suggestion, complaint, whatever, please feel free to send it our way. What are your thoughts of what we discussed today regarding Alan Moore and the Watchmen in DC Comics? We would love to hear what you have to say. And you can reach us by several different methods. One, obviously, would be an email, and that is email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. Or you can go to our website and click on the About Us tab, and there's a form that you can fill out there, and we'll get it just as quickly. You can follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks. That's all one word. And we're obviously on Twitter, @Fellowship Geeks. Feel free to follow us there. And if you like to follow our personal Twitter accounts, you can do that. That would be greatly appreciated. Mike is @MikeyGeek. Liz is @Newman_L. That's NEUMANN_L. And I'm @TomTCGeek. And wherever you download or listen to our shows, whether it's through iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, or iHeartRadio, if you could please give us a rate our shows. And if you have a couple extra moments, a review would be awesome. Did I miss anything?
Nope. I think you nailed it.
Yep.
Once
All
again.
right. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you once again for listening. We do appreciate your support and hope you all have a good week. And until next time, read more comics and support your local stores. We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,